Well, Jezebel, which is a great blog, they recently ran a piece corralling quotes from famous women who refuse to call themselves feminists for a variety of reasons. You know, the F word, as they say. Now, I want to ask you guys, why do you think feminism has such a negative, dated connotation, you know, given that it's defined as sort of the advocacy of women's rights? Chelsea, I know that you call yourself a feminist. Why do you think this is?
I actually talk a lot about people not calling themselves feminists. I just wrote an article about it the other day, and I think, like in my personal life, people that I know who aren't involved with like the internet, who don't write, who are just, who hear about it sort of peripherally occasionally, I think that they think that it's a very academic concept. I think they feel almost like it's necessarily political and academic, and that it doesn't really apply to their day-to-day life. I think they're a lot of times much more concerned with just like, how am I going to finish my job today? How am I going to get paid this month? And I think that, you know, if you look up, you know, feminism and Robin Thicke, or feminism and representation in the media, or feminism and some obscure law, I think that they think that it's very removed sometimes from their daily lives, and I think it makes it intimidating.
Sure. Laverne, what do you think?
When I saw this article, I immediately thought, so feminism needs some rebranding, right? So if all these women are thinking that feminism is a bad word, we need to rebrand it in some way. And then it also seemed to be that a lot of the women were equating it to hating men, to man bashing. And I think it's really unfortunate that when folks think of feminism, they think of it as bashing men. For me, identifying as a feminist is really about trying to dismantle systemic or institutionalized sexism. Right? So that like really it's about a conversation about patriarchy. It's not about attacking people, it's about looking at a system. And what you were just saying, Chelsea, about folks, you know, their own day-to-day lives of getting paid. I mean, women, we still know, are paid less, you know, on average than men. And there's so many inequities in our society. And then really, too, as a trans woman, I think a lot about gender freedom. What does it mean to really be able to create space for ourselves so that we can exist on our own terms as women, and as if anyone's a man or anyone who, how do we have self-determination? For me, that is something that came out of feminism, something that is a feminist legacy that we all benefit from. So the folks who don't necessarily identify as feminist really are not really aware of the history of how feminism has really changed our lives. You know, in terms of the civil rights movement, if we look back on the 60s and civil rights, you know, struggles that were happening in the 60s, women have made most of the progress, really. A lot of progress has been made by women. There's been a lot of backlash because of that too, but lots of progress. I think when people say, I'm not a feminist, it feels ahistorical to me as well.
Totally. Well, you know, it's funny because I think that a lot of people think of feminists and they think of like women who burn their bras, but I'm a feminist and I pay good money for my bras and I've never burned one. And I'll tell you right now, if I did burn one, there would be a massive fire. I'm a huge cup at the moment because I'm drinking a lot of milk. Now, let's get back to the topic though. Chelsea, what sort of everyday examples have you seen that you think could better translate to like younger women who, you know, again, they hear this word feminist and they liken it back to like kind of the olden days, you know what I mean? But how can we make it more modern to young people?
I think the biggest thing to do is make it practical, make it that someone can something that everyone can apply in their lives. Because obviously a lot of people on a day-to-day basis, they often work in places where you can't really be open about your politics, or they're in friend circles where not everyone is super enlightened. So I think if we talk about practical ways like, you know, who the right local candidate to vote for is, or you know, easy ways to, you know, more practical ways to express yourself in the workplace. I think things that people can apply in a very immediate way, even if they're not in the most politically open environment, I think that's the most essential thing, because it takes it out of an academic and theoretical sphere and it puts it into an easy application.
I think you could also probably apply, like, and this is me being extremely shallow, so apologies, you know, in advance, but like doing, I just feel like it needs to be more fun. Like, I know for me it's, you know, you can, of course, the academic stuff many times kind of goes over my head a little bit, you know what I mean? But, you know, I feel like you can make it sort of more into like how we present ourselves, and also why should we do this? And, you know, I mean, I realize I'm like making too much sense right now, but Laverne, what do you think? Like, do you think that there are ways that we can kind of use the internet and like blogs that women read and things of that sort to kind of pull more women into this feminist idea?
I think a big piece of what a lot of women seem to be saying in the article when they said they don't identify as feminist is that they feel like men are not going to be attracted to them.
Right.
So then if I identify as a feminist and I'm a heterosexual woman, then all of a sudden I'm no longer attractive to men. And it seems like that's part of the equation. So I think like when I think about that, I think about all these young girls who are sort of pressured to, I don't want to say pressured, but how many young girls have like made out with another girl and they're not really a lesbian or even bisexual, but they've done it for a guy. Like there's this whole, for me that feels like a lot of the backlash, right? And so even having a feminist politic is just saying that like, I'm attracted to men, I like men, but then I just want to respect myself and I don't want to objectify myself. For me, that's a huge part of feminism too, that like I'm going to just, not objectify myself today. Or if I objectify myself, I do it I understand that I'm doing it in a context that's like about this sort of systemic, male domination.
Like it's because you want to do it, basically.
Yeah.
Totally. Listen, it's like I love men, but I also want to be paid as much as them, if not more, because, that's just how it should be. You know what I mean? But
I think it's like, we all want and need love. And I think if we think, if I identify as a feminist, then I'm not going to have someone to love me. And I think like if we can begin to equate being loved with being a feminist, and then how do we get men involved too? I know a lot of men who identify as feminists, so that the men are involved. And so it becomes this thing of like, let's fight this systemic oppression together. It's not us. We're not against each other in this fight. We can work together.
Totally. And Chelsea, can you think of any like current celebrities? I know this article sort of rattled off a bunch of people, Lady Gaga, and like people who, don't want to call themselves feminists, but are there any out there, who would be out and about proud feminists?
Like that have identified themselves as such?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this article was like pretty negative. It was just, like these women saying, again, like we've been chatting, anti-man or whatever. I just want to know, who do you think are like, who's the future feminist for today's youth, let's say?
I think a good example would probably be Jennifer Lawrence. Is an example of an actress who is not only a very powerful woman and who acts and chooses interesting roles and obviously is very good in the press, but I think she's also someone who has a very good sense of humor about it. Even when she's talking about like people trying to make her lose weight or something like that, she goes about it with a real sense of, she can translate the humor of it all, because it is such a ridiculous situation that she's already so thin and beautiful, and yet we're telling her that she needs to be even thinner to play an athletic woman. And when she talks about it, it sounds like it's one of your friends talking about it. And it really makes you realize just how absurd the whole scenario is. So I think she's a great person to look at.
She's awesome. First of all, it's so beautiful. You're right. It's like insane. The kind of, the things people say about her is infuriating, especially when he like 3 bagels for breakfast, but not the point. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for sharing your opinions on this. And, like one of the Jezebel commenters mentioned, it would be great to see quotes from women who do refer to themselves as feminists and explaining why that, might refute some of these misconceptions. So if you're watching, please in the comments tweet at us IRT Lives about why you're a proud feminist. So thank you guys. That was a fun chat.